Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Commodity TV and a new edition of our online interview series. Today, we want to talk to the Vice President Forbes Gemmel of Discovery Silver. Hey, good morning to Canada. How are you doing?
Yeah, good morning, Johan. I'm very well. Thank you.
Super. Glad to hear that in those shaky times. But honestly, I'm a shareholder of your company. I should disclose that first also. I'm really getting always excited when you bring drill results, because it looks to me like it never stops. It's crazy. And you did the PFS drilling already. You did the resource expansion drilling. Can you please comment on the latest results?
Sure. So why don't we just take a step back, because we put out a very important economic study towards the end of last year, preliminary economic assessment that outlined a very long mine life with very robust economics. And so our drilling subsequent to that study has really been focused on two areas. One is within the open pit that was outlined in the economic assessment to give even more confidence in terms of the resource estimate within that pit, but then also around the pit, which obviously gives potential for longer mine life, even longer than we have already right now. So the results we put out today have been generating very good results within the pit. So that should bode well for a very good economic study in the pre-feasibility study.
Which you are working on, right?
Correct. We're right in the middle of that right now. And then we're getting a lot of interesting results actually outside the pit. So that 16-year mine life we outlined in the PEA, there's excellent potential there for maybe that to be extended. But we'll continue with our heads down. We've got 4 drill rigs turning, and there'll be a lot of drill results still to come through the course of the year.
Fantastic. As we are talking already about the pre-feasibility, let's switch a bit here. What do you expect from that? And when will it come, meaning timeline-wise, pre-feasibility, feasibility study? You did also some great additions to your team, which we will talk in a second about. But when can we expect that, and what workflow do you still have to do?
So right now we're on schedule to deliver the pre-feasibility study in the 4th quarter of this year. And then we're targeting the feasibility study towards the end of next year. And at that point in time, we should be ready for a construction decision. So in terms of the deliverables from the PFS, given the high quality of the preliminary economic assessment, we don't think there's going to be too much change between those results and the pre-feasibility study. So we still expect a very long mine life. We still expect production to be in that 25 to 30 million ounces silver equivalent. So that makes Cordero a top 3 primary silver mine globally. And then we still expect costs to be in the bottom half of the cost curve. So the AISC in our last study was around $12.50 an ounce. All goes to plan. We don't think there should be too much deviation from that all-in sustaining cost in the pre-feasibility study too.
Even despite those inflation numbers we have seen the last 6 to 9 months, as you think?
Yeah, look, there will be some impact from cost inflation. The consultants we're using for the study saying overall, probably there's about a 10% increase in costs. What we're targeting with the metallurgical test work program we're doing is trying to offset some of that through optimizing the flow sheet we use to extract the metal from the rock. And we didn't really focus on that last year, but the test work program we're doing this year is going to hopefully reduce some of the input costs on the processing side. So hopefully it'll come out to be a bit of a wash. We're still about halfway through that metallurgical test work program. That's well progressed, but the final numbers will come out 4th quarter of this year.
Okay, super. So inflation-wise, do you expect also then a much higher Capex?
So on the Capex side, again, if you sort of use that ballpark, 10% cost inflation in general. And usually you see some cost inflation from the PEA, the PFS, as you tighten up the confidence levels. But we are also looking at streamlining the front end of the process circuit. The process that's where most of the Capex gets spent. So whatever we can do to optimize the capital efficiency of the process plant, that's going to be beneficial overall. So we are targeting that in the PFS. So hopefully, again, we'll be able to maybe offset some of the that general Capex inflation that we're seeing across the board.
Super, perfect. What was the baseline Capex in the PEA?
So it was around 370 million. And look, the other thing to keep in mind is, sure, there's Capex inflation, but usually alongside that, you're seeing metal price escalation too. So our last study last year was silver. We used silver at $22 an ounce and zinc at $1.20 an ounce. They're the two key metals that drive the economics, silver especially. But obviously silver right now, we've had a bit of a pullback, but we're up at sort of $25, $26 an ounce not too long ago. And then zinc was actually up above $2 a pound. It's pulled back a little bit to, I think, $1.80, $1.90, but still well above the $1.20 we assume for our last economic study there as well. So there's almost a natural inflation hedge that you get from the cost escalation due to the sort of metal prices that the movements we've seen in some of those metals.
Absolutely. And as I would say, as for the next 2-3 years, I see silver more at $40 to $50 than at 20, to be honest.
Well, you're right. It's frustrating, but long-term fundamentals from a supply point of view in this shift to sort of carbon neutral economy, that's not going away. And there's general supply constraints. So that I agree with you. Obviously, we may have a bit of a biased lens there, but there's always going to be volatility along the way. And I think we've seen that the last few weeks, but that long-term view, I'm confident remains intact.
Definitely. To me, it looks like you have done already a little bit of a construction decision, because you got Tony Esplin as a COO and Tony Makuch as a director. I know Tony also well, and I know he's a sensational mind builder and a great guy. What he did with Kirkland Lake, I mean, it was exceptional.
No, look, we're very excited to have both those Tonys on board. Look, I mean, as a company transitions from an explorer through to a sort of developer and into operations, I think we took the mindset to be very proactive in terms of handling that transition as early as possible. And so bringing Tony Esplin on as Chief Operating Officer. Tony's run some of the biggest gold mines in the world with Newmont. He's also been responsible for major capital projects and mine builds with Newmont through the course of his plus 30-year career. So he now has 12, 18 months runway ahead of a construction decision to build out his team and take control of the project as we enter that next transition phase. And then Tony Makuch, I mean, as you know, spectacular track record with Kirkland Lake. I mean, the market cap there under his tenure went from 1 billion to over 10 billion, share price up more than 500%. So he's joined as a director. So he's going to have oversight, obviously, of that process as we move the project forward. But certainly the caliber of both those candidates is not only a huge thing for us to have now on our team, but also a fantastic endorsement of the quality of the project too. Yeah, definitely, because if they would not like it, they would not have joined you. No, exactly. I'm sure they did their due diligence too. No, for sure. We agree with that. Absolutely. I also saw you did a first ESG report. Can you maybe address a little bit on that? Because I saw some really good things I really liked. Yeah, look, I mean, ESG is a funny one. It's a bit of a buzzword right now. I think we've taken the mindset that you can't get a project built or a mine built unless you have local support. We say local support, local communities and the local government and local stakeholders. So I think ESG just helps formalize that. We've already been very active, but last year we published our first ever ESG report. There was a lot of effort that went into that with some external consultants, basically looking at the situation of our project and what it could look like in the future years and the economic benefits it'll bring. And so we're now basically taking that report and starting to ramp up on our deliverables on the ESG front through the course of this year in terms of sort of formal certifications. But even outside of that, we're always recognizing just how important it is to get that local buy-in, not only from the communities, but from the government there too. So a very big priority for us, and it always has been. Great. How is the overall situation in Mexico? For example, we saw with Mex Silver, there are like 6 months delayed to get connection to the grid. Yeah, stuff like this. We heard in the news, maybe there will be some new mining laws, tax laws, etc. What is your thinking on that? Look, there's no doubt there's been some negative headlines out. Even last week, there was the vote that was in support of nationalizing lithium projects. Lithium has been deemed to be a strategic asset. So I think there's a very low probability, given the history of gold, silver, copper mining in Mexico that goes back centuries. I think there's a very low probability that any nationalization would then flow into those principal metals. On the permitting side, there have been some delays because there were some major cuts, especially in Mexico City, in the permitting office there. What we are looking at for our project is for all the permitting to go through the state government, which, if not to get the details, but if we're not using cyanide at the start of the mine life, we don't have to go through Mexico City. We can go through Chihuahua. And Chihuahua is one of the very active mining states. There's dozens of operating mines there. Mining is a pillar of the economy. We feel that should give us more confidence in terms of the timeline and the turnaround time on those permits. And overall, I mean, mining still in Mexico is such an important part of the economy. And yes, there has been some negative headlines and some negative noise around that. But being such an important pillar, I feel like, especially for those key metals, copper, gold, silver, there's always going to be some natural protection there to make sure that they're sustainable into the future and they're not being overtaxed or overburdened.
Yeah, and finally, people need work. They need, and the government needs the taxes for sure. And also, I saw in your ESG report, you have like from your total workforce, 89% are Mexicans, and you have 66 contractors, where 98% are Mexicans. So you have really a value creation in the country, in your community, right?
Absolutely. I mean, most of our workforce right now, the contractors, are associated with drilling. We have 4 drill rigs turning. We use 2 different drill contractors. Absolutely. And that's the nice thing about Mexico is there's access to that skilled labor and access to those technical services. And so as we move towards construction development, obviously that employee count is going to go up. And absolutely, we'll be targeting a very high percentage of local workforce, even with that extra growth, because there is that skill set in country. That's one of the lovely things about being in Mexico.
Yeah, absolutely. Super. So you said the feasibility study by end of next year. That means then you can start already with the project finance. When do you expect you can, let's say, depending on project finance, of course, let's assume you will get the project finance very rapidly, because I can imagine that you have a lot of interest already from banks and lenders and streamers, etc. When do you think you can start production?
So if you assume feasibility study towards the end of next year and a 2-year construction, that will take initial production towards the end of 2025. So obviously with Tony Esplin, our new COO, coming on board, he's going to go through that schedule with a fine-tooth comb. But our objective here is always trying to be proactive. So the pre-feasibility study, we're trying to shape that to be very similar to what the feasibility study is going to be. And what that allows us is then to have discussions with all the lenders and potential project financiers through the course of next year ahead of the delivery of the feasibility study. And we want to be ideally in a position where we deliver that feasibility study in conjunction with announcing project financing. And look, it's early days on that front, but I think we're at a high level looking at a 60% debt, 40% equity type situation. And so we'll continue to advance to look at any opportunities we can to get some of that financing put in place over the next 12 to 18 months here, ahead of that construction decision too.
Okay, super. Question about money, of course, as always, as drills are turning, you have people working there. What's the cash situation with the company, and is it enough for until the end of next year? Meaning, is it enough to do the feasibility?
Sure. So we have 60 million cash balance right now, no debt. So we're in a very strong position. There will be some warrants coming in over the coming months, but we do expect to be in a very strong position come construction decision at the end of next year. We're still sort of finalizing what those cash forecasts will be, but as a ballpark, maybe it's sort of 30 to 40 million. We have to wait to see how the next few months with some of these warrants coming in, but we don't really need to sort of come to market between now and that construction decision. We have a nice runway here with our current cash balance to put ourselves in a very strong position at the time of construction there next year.
Fantastic. Lovely to hear that. What is the share structure? Meaning, who are your largest shareholders? Are you protected against the unfriendly guy who might knock on your door?
We are. So Eric Sprott, I mean, he owns 25%. He's our biggest shareholder. He's been a fantastic supporter for the last 2 or 3 years. It's actually one of his biggest positions. I think maybe it's his 3rd biggest position in the precious metal space. And in the silver space, I think it might be second behind First Majestic, but certainly he's been a big supporter of ours. And there's an obvious, call it poison pill there. And then our second biggest shareholder is Merian, well, now Jupiter Asset Management. They're based out of London there, and they own just shy of 10%. So obviously between those 2 shareholders, that's close to 35%, and certainly puts us in a strong position if there is any hostile takeover that may sort of play out in the long run.
So, but what is management share?
Management, insiders, etc. That's around 10% too.
Oh, nice.
So there's a strong ownership at that level as well. And then, I mean, you bring up potential takeout. I think we're taking an agnostic view on that. Obviously, with the 2 Tonys coming on board, we are taking the mindset that we are the ones building this and putting this into production. But we're also going to be sort of an open book in the meantime. If there's a takeout offer that makes sense to our sort of key shareholders, then that's something that obviously we'd take a very sort of serious look at too. But we don't want to get caught in the trap of hoping to get taken out. And then if that doesn't happen, we don't have a team to then go off and build the mine. You're left scrambling for good quality labor in a very tight labor market. So again, it comes back to that proactive approach of taking control of our own destiny and building out our own team early so we don't fall into that trap.
Super. Perfect. Hey, Forbes, thank you very much for the update. That was, 17 minutes. I love it. Lots to talk about. I think you guys are doing the right stuff here, and you added the right people. That was, for me, also important. I would say let the drills turn, and please deliver more good results and keep it going. We need your mine.
I appreciate your time, and always good to join you. And appreciate the excellent questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that was Forbes Gemmel, the Vice President Corporate Development of Discovery Silver. You heard it. Things are really going fantastic. The ball is rolling. Great drill results. $60 million in the bank. The company is not under pressure. They can do their pre-feasibility, their feasibility study until the end of next year. That all is done. All goes parallel also with the permitting, and they are well protected, really protected against an unfriendly takeover with 25% with Eric Sprott, 10% with the next largest shareholder, and also 10% with the management. That is fantastic. This is what we like. And this project will be definitely a mine through the addition of Tony Esplin and Tony Makuch. I have a very good feeling. You should check out the company, because at those low share prices, that is a bargain for that quality. Thanks for watching us, and bye-bye from Switzerland.